Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 212. Today's topic, a new fantasy monster, the Fusellbüt, an ode to Eric, the first of many.
He said, but. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And, how am I today?
You're a fusselin'.
We are a fusselin', so I guess I am a fusselin'. I am Michael Miller.
Yes, he is Michael the Gray. Is that the official title? I don't know.
I'll take the gray. I'm okay with the gray.
Yeah,
I got a little gray going on.
The white is too lame for me. I like the gray better.
The white's good. I'm just not there yet, but I definitely have.
I hate to tell you, the exam for that one can be dangerous.
I'm salt. Yes. I'm definitely salt and pepper though. I've got a lot of gray and in the beard.
I don't. Look at me. I should. I'm older than you. Oh God.
Yeah, but I am infinitely more buff. So.
Well, it depends on how you define buff. I define buff by the rolls in the stomach.
Oh, I see. Well, then you have me beat.
Got ya.
You know that's
just so everyone knows.
Everybody else defines buff, right?
Michael he's only 6'4". He has 22-inch biceps. So I mean, this guy
21.
He has these like lines all over his stomach. I don't even know. That's embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed to have all of those abdominal lines going on. So.
You give me too much credit. I will say this: when I was in high school, you could have done laundry on my stomach. I had like an 8-pack when I was 17, but that was a long time ago. I'm looking to get back to the size I was when I was 24, and I will look better because I'm a lot stronger now. And with what Sarah and I are doing for workouts, like our workouts are grueling. So
yeah, even when I used to work out like religiously, which I did obviously when I was a soldier, and
I can't imagine what you must have looked like when you got out of basic.
Yeah. No, actually, I had like muscle definition in arms and stuff like that, and I was actually in really good shape. But I could always feel the 6-pack, but it never actually kind of popped out. It was always like just this thin layer of fat that would never go away. Drove me crazy. Must be a genetic loss there for me.
No, not really though, because
couldn't get it out.
To have a 6-pack, like a lot of guys, they're there. They have them. They're just underneath.
Oh, I do.
To get them to pop, you have to have like 10% body fat or less, and that is really hard to get and really hard to maintain.
Yeah, I doubt I was there, but I was in really good shape at that point, and mainly because I used so much energy every day.
Yeah, of course.
Between PT and my job, that I burned lots of calories, but I ate a lot too.
The other big thing about it though is that abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. A lot of people think they gotta work out like crazy. Like you have to.
Well,
eat
I'm going to call that genetics
way.
Anyway.
Yeah, you have to eat a certain way, and
biscuits and gravy are genetics.
So we have a little interesting episode for you guys today.
Yes.
I could certainly explain a little bit, but I think it would be a lot more appropriate for Jeff too. So
essentially,
we are going to go ahead. I was going to say we are going to make a monster, and then take it away, Jeff.
We are going to make a monster, and this is the first episode where we've been ordered to make content. This is like, this comes down from on high, at least to me. Michael doesn't care, but he thinks it's going to be fun, so he's along for that.
No, I care. I absolutely care. I respect Kristen, and if she wants content made, I can respect that. And certainly, this topic, absolutely.
To give a little background, one of the creatures of my world who actually show up in the first book that will hopefully get finished and be out this year, there's a creature called a gibberling, And a gibberling is a fantastical creature, a sort of a toddler-sized magical being. Think of kind of like a brownie, but hairless, sort of big centered eyes on the face. Kind of really looks like a toddler without any hair. And would make gibbering sounds like, oh, shikacha, oh, shikacha. And that was inspired from my nephew, who I lived with for a couple of years when he was a baby and a toddler, and watching Japanese movies with me. And so now, here 21 years later, my first kid, Eric, is born, and he does this really cute thing where he sounds like he's fussing. He's happy he does it. When he's hungry, he does it. It's like his "I'm not crying" sound at this point. And so it's like, and so that's really the only sound he makes outside of wah. And but I started calling him Fussel and then Fusellbüt. And then I was informed that this needs to become a creature in my world. So Michael and I have a creature. I have no predeterminations for this creature except for its name. It's probably going to be a magical being to keep it sort of in the family of gibberlings, but not going to be a gibberling. It's a Fusellbüt. That's why it can't be. It can't be a gibberling. So all I really have is infant. If just to help feed Michael some possible inspiration, there is a few functions that they do as newborns. They sleep, they eat, they pee and poop, and that's it.
You do know I am familiar with what humans do when they are born, right?
Yes, but I'm going over to make sure that you don't have these additional things that really happen there.
You are not the first friend of mine to have a child.
About 95% of the day is asleep. And no, I'd say about 75% of the day is asleep. About 20% is eating, and throughout that and the 5% of being awake is peeing and pooping. So
sounds a lot like his father.
There's limited inspiration. Well, I don't sleep as much.
Not now.
But I don't do much more than that, though. So, so that is the inspiration behind this critter that we are going to make. And it is, of course, the Fusellbüt. And it will be spelled in Bedracham phonics, even though I'll write it in English, because, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe on the show notes, I'll put the Bedracham characters to it. But the problem is if you share it, it will just go back to whatever font is underneath it. So yes, it is the Fusellbüt.
Now, for me, to approach this, I have to think about the nature of the creature, and I start with the size. So we're obviously paying homage to Eric in his current state, and he's small. Yes. Do you intend this to be a small creature?
I want to do this.
It could be.
I normally start off the way you do, right? Where I think of the body mechanics and the description.
Yeah.
However, I don't want to be tied down.
Can the Fusellbüt be amorphous? Can its size and shape change depending on the nature of the creature? If it is magical, after all,
it's going to be magical because the first thing I like to look at is the type of creature, and then I usually like to go into the description. I want to do the description last,
physical description last,
and maybe we want it to be amorphous where it could change. That actually, in a way, makes sense for the creature, I think. But I want to go through some other things that I like to look at first.
Okay.
For this one, I usually do the opposite. I usually do exactly what Michael's saying. I want to know how big the creature is. I want to know how it fits into the environment. The good thing is, with the type of creature being magical, it does not really need to fit into the environment.
That's fair.
The environment, it might show up in certain types of environments in the natural world. But the thing is, unlike a naturally selected creature, it doesn't have those kinds of limitations. So it's less important. However, certain types of the natural world, probably where they can get access to the natural world, are probably the kinds of areas they'll be found in. And yeah, so the only real restriction I have to the monster is the name, and that's a magical creature.
Okay.
And so, but I do want to think of, before we go on, it is found in my world near magical nodes.
Okay.
And that's a lame term. Let me explain it for the other people who don't know. Magical nodes are essentially where ley lines come together. So where ley lines cross, think of ley magic as in old Celtic magic. You have lines that crisscross the world. And in my world, that's kind of like, it's like how magic flows through the world. And so where they cross, there's stronger magic. And I don't think there's anything new here. And I've never done a lot of leyline research, but the way I use them is those nodes, especially ones with water, with my connection to magic, water itself doesn't conduct electricity, but magic is sort of this electrical nature to it. And so in areas that conduct water better, magic comes out better. So if there is a pool of water in nature that is at a node, because of all of the materials within the water, it will conduct the magic better than if it was just ground.
Is the creature itself is it a created magical creature?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
So it's a naturally occurring species? Is it a sentient species? Is this like a monster, or is it like a race?
I consider gibberlins sentient. You've interacted with them. Would you consider them sentient?
I don't remember them.
It's been so long.
Like, It's probably been.
They're very chaotic in nature. They have gibberlins have intelligence, and they all seem that way because they're devilish. They're almost gremlin in nature, where they like to cause havoc and destruction. And the more frustrated they are, the more upset they are, the more dangerous they become. Usually it's playful, but sometimes it's like, oh, you fell into a pit of razors. Oh, whoops. So
sounds like a child.
But that is a gibberling. These guys, I think all magical. I don't know of any magical creatures that are dumb. We might not completely see eye to eye with their intelligence. You probably can't have a conversation with them because they just sound like they fuss whenever, like, that's the only sound that they can make is a fuss. So you can't communicate with them, but I'm saying they're probably sentient.
Okay, so we're going to stay away from physical form for a few minutes. I keep getting stuck on that. Do they have a language that is discernible to other races?
No.
Okay.
They sound like they're fussing. If you hear them make sound.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm just wondering if that could be learned.
Probably not. However, I'm assuming other magical creatures could communicate with them.
All right. Fair enough. Well, then I suppose that we could move to like abilities. Do you want to talk about like magical powers or?
So the first things I want to talk about is what is in it for the monster, and I have to do a shout out to Randy Ellefson, I believe is his name. I actually saw him post on it, and he sort of talked about this idea of what's in it for a monster. And that's something that I've not actually thought about generally. I usually think about what purpose I have for them. And this is, I guess, a different way of thinking about that. But what are they here for?
What's their motivation?
What's their motive? Exactly. What's their motivation? And I have none for this monster. And so, I think they have a very limited skill set, but ultimately there has to be something in it for them. The classic things for monsters are like they're hoarders, like they want to hoard stuff, or they want to, like a revenge. I don't think it's quite that. It might just be to eat.
Can I offer something strange?
Yes. Oh, please do.
what if they are addicted to certain types of emotion? So
addicted to emotion. So they feast on emotion?
They feed on certain types. So their magic would be to manipulate people's emotions to their own end. Not nefariously, not necessarily nefariously,
or at least purposely.
But it's their self-motivated purpose. But the other thing is, like let's say for sake of argument, they feed on laughter, right? So there's something about laughter that they need on some sort of magical level or physiological level for whatever reason, because they're magical, right? And if you're in a dangerous scenario and you run into one of these things and all of a sudden it puts you in a laughing fit, like a joyous laughing fit, like you're no longer in the mood to be heightenedly situationally aware and combat ready, like you know what I'm saying? So it could be dangerous depending on where you run into one. Like if you run into one in a ley line in a field where it's all fine and dandy, it's perfectly safe, it might be a pleasant experience to run into one, because then they give you this joyous experience. But if you run into one in ley lines that are in like, a lich's crypt, it would be...
It might be bad.
It would be very bad. And not to mention at that point, if the Fusellbüt's in the lich's crypt, it's probably starving for laughter, in which case you probably wouldn't be getting out of that laughing fit very easily.
Okay, so let's manipulate what you're saying there.
Yeah, run with it.
But I like this idea of addicted to emotion, feeds on emotion, and like infants will do cues to try and to interact with you. Sometimes they're curious, sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they. That's really it, but I'll kind of maybe expand it out to they're looking for joy, base emotions, right? So it will use cues to try and engender that response from you. So it'll try and get you to laugh if it needs the laughter to feed. It'll try and get you to talk and to show it stuff if it is feeling curious.
Just so that we understand.
And if you don't...
Hang on. Just so that we understand where you are talking about what. When you're referring to infants, say they. When you're referring to the Fusellbüt, say it.
Okay.
You keep saying it, and I'm pretty sure you're referring specifically to your son.
No. Now I'm moving back to the Fusellbüt. I'm taking some lessons I've learned from my son.
Okay.
And I'm applying it to the Fusellbüt. So let's say it's looking for these raw emotions.
Okay.
Like it needs some curiosity to feed it. It needs laughter to feed it. It needs love to feed it. It needs, and if you can read what it's trying to do, if you can, the riddle of the Fusellbüt is that you have to understand what it's looking for, and it will cue you to that, but the cues aren't necessarily obvious. But if you don't feed it what it wants, it gets angry, and then it feeds off of anger from you, and that's when it becomes dangerous, because you start
you create a stereo feedback at that point.
Yeah.
It getting angry could make you more angry, could make it more angry, so on and so forth. But the joyous way could work the same way. It could have a good time. You could have a good time. It could have.
But the thing about this though, it's like, and I think maybe the stereo effect. I kind of like that name. Is it causes your emotion.
So it causes your emotion.
Or it tries to. It will certainly by the point it gets mad.
Well, let's go back to the scenario where it's in a lich tomb. So if it's in a negative environment and it's always in a bad mood and it's sad, and you go into that scenario, would it just reflect its current mood onto you? Or so
I think it's the reverse.
Okay, well, I want to hang on a second, because is it shooting for, like, do you like the idea of it trying to feed on positive emotion, or maybe just it feeds on significant emotion?
I think it wants significant emotion. It wants positive. Positive like feeds it better.
Okay.
And so there's going to be a reciprocal like bonus to you if you can do it. but it will suffice for anger and hatred, which it's easier for it to get you to do.
Okay.
So once positive, emotion to feed, buffs people who do this. If it gets to negative, then it drains from, at that point, victim. So it's one of those things where it could be a positive or a negative encounter, so maybe the Fusellbüt wants, you to be positive. And if you do that, because of what it does, it makes you a little bit stronger, a little bit smarter, a little bit happier. It makes you stronger, sort of in an overall kind of sense. But if you don't, it will get frustrated and mad and angry. It will then drain the food from you, and it needs a little bit more because it's it's not as effective at it. But and depending on where it's at, that becomes the danger. If there's less things for it to interact with, the more desolate the situation is, the more it needs to feed.
What is its sphere of influence? How physically far away do you need to be outside of its influence?
I think it's a line of sight influence.
Okay. So as soon as it can see you?
As soon as it can see you to start.
Okay. Well, if you were, a half mile away but it could see you, is that fair or is it like within reason?
I think it's I think
How about it's got to be able to for the sake of distance, it's got to be able to tell what color your eyes are.
Yeah, it's something like that where
like there's a connection, a vision.
There needs to be a detail. You have to be able to distinguish detail.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're talking like 100 feet.
Would depend on the creature. Yep.
Right. Oh, can you imagine like one of these things being blind?
Well, it's not because it needs to see you. It's because
know.
You need to see it.
I know. But if it was blind, I imagine it would go after anything within its sphere as soon as possible and latch onto it, because who knows how often it feeds.
Oh, yeah. And I think depending on where it's at, it's more likely to latch on sooner rather than later. But, yeah. And I think it uses sound to lure people to it.
Sorry, it broke up there. It uses sound
to lure people to it. So it uses like sort of cooing and fussling type of sounds. It uses those sounds to try and pull people closer. And it might do other things as well too, like the magic, like you see a shadow move, and that's where the magic comes in.
So here's a bit. Let's say, and this is in tying it to your infant son Eric. Let's say that it sounds like a baby of whatever species is listening to it.
Oh, yeah, I think that would be the native, yeah.
That way, and that's a magical thing, obviously, because, it might not know, like, it might not know what the infant of a given species sounds like, but that's how to lure it in, that's like its trickery sound to lure a person closer.
Yes.
So, okay, so how about this? Once they're within a far distance, but like say half a mile away, it can see you. At that point, it can activate this sound. It can't mess with your emotions yet, but it can activate that sound at that point.
It has two things it can do. I think it can use the sound, and it can use illusions not to elicit emotion, but to create curiosity in you, to try and pull you to it. So, oh look, some gold coins on the ground. Oh look, what the heck? Why is there a trail of gold coins? And and the magic plays off of your weaknesses.
Okay. So, getting back to that, tying into it kind of almost knowing you.
Yeah.
Like artificially it gets to know a little about you, kind of. All right, do you want to get back to this thing's size?
A couple more questions first.
Okay.
What attracts it? And we think it's hunger, right?
What do you mean?
What attracts it? What gets its attention? And we think it's hunger. We think it's hunger driven.
Why does it want to go after a person, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. What's going to engage it in the scenario? What's going to attract it to become engaged with someone? And it's because it's hungry.
Yeah. It's hungry, but it's like it's a weird hunger.
Well, I'm saying hunger in the sense of this monster hunger. It might want curiosity. It might want love. It wants that big positive, significant emotion. But if it's like just fed, it might ignore you.
Is there any way?
Because it's asleep.
Okay, so how about this? If it gets fed a lot, so let's say there's a party of 4. And they come across this thing in, a dungeon, and it traps the whole party because it's close quarters, and then it feeds off of them briefly. Once fed, is it sleepy, and then it
goes to sleep,
and then it releases them. So at that point, is there an advantage to killing it? Is it able to be killed? Like, is it like semi-impervious when sleeping?
Or maybe it passes back to its realm.
That's an interesting thought.
It comes out to feed and then it returns to its realm. That's a thought.
If somebody's able to resist it, and they decide it's time for combat, what would occur there?
Don't know yet.
Food for
we might go back to that after we do what it looks like.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of more things, and the reason I want to do these other things is because I have no idea what. It's easy to make it an infant, but I don't think I want it to be an infant, because that's too easy. But maybe it is. I don't know. Inherent strengths. It's magical. I think it's cute to viewer. Like unnaturally cute. Like if you want to hit it, it's like you determining you want to kill a child.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Significant. Yeah,
it's significant for most people.
Does its physical form change, or are we talking about a set form?
I'm open to that. What do you want?
I kind of like the idea of it being a set form. That way it's identifiable. You can't, like, somebody can know about, you've never seen a Fusellbüt before? Oh, yeah, well, they kind of look like this,
Okay, you like the idea of the set form? Okay. So I'm going to actually make that a weakness. That's not really either. I don't leave it under strength.
Yeah. So it's possible to, learn about them, see them, identify them, what have you. But there also needs to be, I feel like some part of it needs to be a little amalgamous in the fashion. I don't want to go so far as to say like a glamour, but maybe its features, maybe there's like a very mild shapeshifter quality to their face. Maybe they can make their face look a little similar to the species that's approaching them. Because obviously, if it's like a troll or an orc coming to them, they might not think if it's trying to look like a human baby, they might be like, oh, that's ugly. And if a human was to come across it and it's like, some other species that's an ugly species, and it needs to be approachable and thus disarming in a cute way that's relatable to whoever is the victim that's being called over to it. So I feel like it needs a little bit of shapeshifter quality.
So actually, how about this, right? It's a wisp style creature. Hold on.
So you can't really...
It's not directly... It's not natively corporal, so you couldn't be slashing into it with the sword normally, which makes it very tough to fight. But what happens is some of the light can form into a face. So it can become the face of the thing that it's trying to elicit. So it'll gain those, it's like humans, the dimensions of where the eyes are lower down on an infant, and all of the features are designed to make humans that see it go, oh, it's cute. And actually, primates in general, all infants have the same qualities. All primates will typically have a reaction to any primate baby because of the way the shapes of their faces are, where their eyes are in relation to their head. And so there's similar stuff with any race that reproduces, because it needs to, that if it reproduces and needs to take care of the young.
Okay.
But you don't sound sold on the wisp style sort of
I'm not.
being of light. You don't like?
For the conceptually, it fits really well. So I won't argue with you there. But I feel
it's not fussel enough.
It loses the fussel. I feel like if it's not some sort of physical thing that you can interact with, it loses the fussel quality that started this.
How about just an amorphous blob, and part of it can form up into a head, like it can kind of grow a neck with a face?
I wouldn't have a hard time stabbing a blob.
But the thing is, it's the face, and it hypnotizes you. There is magic involved with it too. It's not so simple.
So almost like a majesty quality?
There's like a majesty quality to it. But we're calling it a cute majesty quality. But it's in the face, and you're forced to focus on the face.
How about it is like, let's take the blobby and make it like a bipedal blob, so that it's kind of humanoid shaped, but not without much in the way of features. So
I get what you're saying.
Think of like a gummy bear.
Yeah. I know. It's like a blob, but like Clayman.
Yeah. Yes. Or like, but and I'm also thinking,
but not clay.
I'm thinking of like cartoony characters where, and it still is. What's the word I'm looking for? Its locomotion is still bipedal, unless what it wants to interact with isn't.
It can become tripedal or spider leg or snake leg, depending on what it's interacting with.
Sure.
So cartoony blob,
not literal cartoony.
Powerpuff.
Like I'm thinking.
I'm thinking it's like Powerpuff. There's like no digits.
Yes. That's a great way to say it. Yes.
Power
puffy. Power puffy.
Version of victim's infant. Okay. So that goes under description. So I'm going to say for weaknesses, there's no digits.
How big is it? I'm thinking like 3 feet.
I think it has to be smaller. Yeah.
Smaller than?
Smaller than? No, smaller than like the creature.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking like 3 feet tall.
We're going to say 1/3 of victim height.
Okay. I like that.
Even though it's not necessarily a victim, I'm just calling it victim right now because
No. That's appropriate wording for me.
Because I'm expecting it's tough to really have it feed off of you and have it all happy and love.
When you are in the throes of it, is it like there's got to be some level where you can fight it on a willpower level? So it's got to be it's got to be a level of majesty. And for the listeners, when I use the word majesty, and I'm sure Jeff knows exactly
we're just
what
making
I'm
that up
about.
right now. Yep.
No, I'm using that word quite specifically in how it relates to White Wolf's Vampire the Masquerade. Majesty was a power where you just looked at someone who had majesty and used it against you. You just looked at them in awe. You were like, wow, this person's so great. You're like, oh, and you just wanted to do things for them. And but because they were using this power on you. So that's kind of how I'm thinking.
Because that's kind of the idea of a dragon where you have to overcome the fear to be able to try and steal from it or do bad things to it.
Right.
But majesty works.
But in this case, like you want to help it, you want to like it, you immediately have
want it to be satisfied. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
you immediately have a positive feeling towards the thing, which makes it harder for you to want to attack it. And then on top of that, it starts manipulating your emotions. So at some point, there's got to be something, like if you start to, like, let's say it's got negative emotions going on and it starts to put negative emotions on you. I don't think that you're immediately going to be like, oh no, this thing's making me angry. I think you're going to be like, oh, I'm angry. Oh, I don't want to be angry for this thing. Or
I don't think it necessarily changes your emotion because if you don't get it and it becomes angry, it's because you're not doing what it wanted you to. You'll probably get frustrated, but that's a byproduct. It's getting frustrated, which means it will start drawing out your life force, and it's through your anger emotion, which is why you end up getting frustrated. But there's a time lag where if you can go, wait, no, it just needs a hug, and you go up and hug it, you can and start. It'll back up. Once it gets to like anger. If it doesn't lose it, it can back up. So it's a berserker.
When you say back up, what do you mean? Like a backed up pipe?
So let's say it's looking for love, right?
Right.
And you don't understand it. It won't initiate. It'll do facial cues. It will waggle itself, but it won't initiate. But if you can, if you come up and show it acts of love, it will get happy. It will feed. You'll get the buff. If you don't, it will start to become frustrated to a point of, I'm calling it blob berserk rage, which it's not out for your blood, but it starts to get so angry that you get frustrated, you get angry, and that's how it feeds and drains you. So that's how it'll get the other side of it.
Okay. And at that point, then there should be like a fatigue cost to you.
Yes.
As a result of it feeding on you. Because babies are fatiguing. I'm sure you can confirm this.
Fatigue, attack to full. Okay.
Do you want to talk about... Oh, actually, you already covered that. I was going to say, do you want to talk about...
I got one more thing that I need answered here.
Okay, what?
And this might fall under weakness, and we'll have to figure it out. Since it's corporeal, what happens if there are 2 or 3 different races in the same room?
Are you shooting for corporeal?
Whatever I said it, corporal. Like it's going to punish you.
Okay.
Corporal, coral, whatever.
I say like whatever it latches onto.
Okay,
like if there's multiple races, it's not going to try for them all. It's gonna latch on to somebody. It's gonna go all in on that person. And that would actually be an advantage to the party. So like if you've
unless they're all the same race.
What I was going to say is if you have a party of different races. So if you've got like one elf and it happens to be gravitating towards the elf, but you got 3 dwarves and they're all like, "What are you looking at?" No.
Oh my god, a baby elf! Kill it!
Yeah. That's that. Why does it look like her? But it's being so strange, and now our mage is acting really funny. Like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah. So it can be a benefit or possibly a hindrance for those non-diverse parties, because if they're all the same race, they're all going to be affected the same way. It's not feeding off of all of them at once. I think it's latched to one at a time.
No,
I'm leaving it's latched at one at a time. But it could change if someone else figures it out and they walk up and start feeding it. It will change its attention to them. So I think it latches on at one being at a time. However, its attention can shift very easily because it has a short attention span.
Because I'm thinking like in close proximity that it could feed on multiple people, and then thus be sated quickly and affect the whole group.
I think that would be positive, but I'm changing that because I think the idea of it having a short attention span. So like it wants the thing, and if you're not giving it to them, but someone else does, it'll go ooh, and it will shift to them.
Okay.
which could be even more strange if it is a different race character that figures it out, like the orc barbarian figures out that it wants to be cuddled, and it goes up and cuddles with him, and it like morphizes to an orc baby.
It morphs into this small, muscular or orky looking thing
with a full beard. Well, that's a dwarf. Magical. So the buff.
So
I'm calling it the buff right now, unless you come up with a better name. Is really good.
Okay, but I think the buff has to be circumstantial. So I think it should be based on the emotion that satisfies it, and whether or not the character. I think the buff should only get to the character if the character actively feeds it. So like if it needs a hug and a little love, and then and one of the characters does exactly that, then it gets a big buff. But
yes, and it's a good buff. I'm like it's like that's something that people would seek out. So it becomes a two-edged sword. So it's like you want to feed the Fusellbüt if you find one, because the reward is it's like it could be even secret lore that you'll just figure out. It will primordially help you achieve what you need to achieve, not knowing what you need, that you understand. You never say it to him, but like you need that information on that, how to defeat this other monster. You'll figure it out after feeding a Fusellbüt if it's positive. If it's negative, you might die. You won't get the buff either way.
When interacting with a Fusellbüt, is there any sort of reciprocal
knowledge or physical?
Like if you feed a Fusellbüt and you get the buff, is there any sort of like emotional imprint?
Well, I mean, you'll get the emotions off of it too. So it's like, it's like as you feed it love, you're going to feel more love for it. It will respond to you the way your infant would with love.
I think
it'll look gassy.
I think I like the idea you said before, like if it is satisfied and it sleeps, it then returns to its own realm, because at that point you couldn't have somebody constantly like holding
it disappears. Yes.
You couldn't have somebody holding on to one and trying to maintain some sort of ongoing relationship with one to constantly buff themselves.
Well, that would be dangerous because you'd probably frustrate it if you woke it up. But let's make it a. I want to make that lore, so I'm going to add a little lore element to this magical being. Lore can be captured.
What'd you say?
It can be captured with. I want to say a magic. Magic net if you positive feed it, or if you feed it.
And what is the advantage to capturing one? That's
a lore. Oh, that's what you're saying, right? If you can capture it in the net after you feed it before it fades, then you have it at your disposal. But I think that's. I'm going to call that lore BS.
Oh, that's not true. So
it's not true.
Okay, so it's like trying to capture a leprechaun sort of thing.
Exactly. It's like you follow the rainbow to the end, you'll find the leprechaun's gold. And you can't do it. No matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, it just won't work. But causes a quest beast like response.
I'm sorry, beast? Is that what you said?
There's this old Arthurian critter that kind of came up time and again in Arthurian lore called the questing beast.
Okay.
And it was this thing that you would see if you were out in the hunt. And if you ever saw it, you would have to hunt it until you caught it. But you could never catch it. It's a magical being. It's like a leprechaun. But you're trying to catch it. You're trying to hunt it for the rest of your life. and you really can't stop. I mean, you can, but there's extreme like story, like epic story things that would have to happen to get out of it. So if you try and catch it, there's a risk that you get caught into trying to find more to try and use your net to capture them.
All right. Are there any other... So, okay, we have gone over why and strengths and weaknesses. What repels it? That's a
what
good
repels
question.
it. And I kind of put
question.
sleep. I put sleep down. When it goes to sleep, it's repelled, and that's the only way you can repel it. Is it has to be fed, or do we want something else? I don't know. Because the thing is, anything else is going to frustrate it, and it's going to try and feed off of you a different way. So I think it's just feeding it repels it. I mean,
I'm trying to think. Well, let's go back.
Not in a negative way.
Let's go back to the source material. What would repel Eric?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And that's why I have sleep written down under there, but it's really not true. It has to feed. When it latches onto you, it's there because it has to feed. It has to feed. You can't get rid of it until it's fed. It will feed one way or the other.
So it's like an emotional vampire.
Yeah, except it might not drain your life.
Might,
but it might.
So okay, let's go with let's define a worst case scenario. So, so it it latches on. It's in a bad mood. Bad things are occurring. What is the worst that can happen to a person in that scenario?
You will die.
You can die. This thing can be deadly. Okay,
but I think the result is it drains your fatigue, and you and it both disappear. Ooh, so we don't know what happens.
It could pull you into its realm.
Yes.
Which,
okay.
You know what? Okay, I got it. So, it becomes frustrated with you because you're not feeding it the way it wants to be fed. So, i.e. a baby crying that just will keep crying until you do what it needs to be done. And then sometimes there is nothing to be done. So
yes, that's also the problem.
Yes.
That's the hidden danger that doesn't get talked about in the storybooks.
So in this scenario, it finally gets frustrated enough. It pulls you into its realm until you are ready to feed it the way it needs to be fed. And then
we're going to say for all we're going to say all lore-wise is you disappear with it when you fall. If you fall asleep while it feeds off of you, which you will if it's angry, you and it will both disappear.
Right, but here's what I'm saying occurs on the other side, though. So it still needs to be fed the right way, or just get bored of feeding off of you the wrong way, and eventually it will let you back into the world. But
how about this though? It's like Celtic fairies, right? If you go to its realm, a minute is an hour. An hour is a day. A day is a year. So if it takes you, if you're there for like a few days trying to take care of this thing, and it finally releases you, it's like you're in the 24th century.
Yeah, but that's a little severe.
Magical beings typically aren't unsevere.
I understand
That's
that.
Disney talking in you.
I understand that, but we are still talking about something that is inspired from Eric. So I think there still needs to be. I still think it needs to be not so negative. So it pulls you into its world. That's significant enough. But when it once it's satiated, and then it releases you, so to speak, and you go back into your world. You could do a time thing, but I don't think it should be like years. I think that's way too... I think it could be like hours, maybe. But it's up to you whether or not it drops.
Well, see, I think the story at that point would be escaping.
Well, right, but does it drop you in the same place, or does it drop you somewhere else? Does it drop you at another ley line? If it's a ley line creature, then I would argue that it can travel through ley lines the way the elves can.
So instead of like time, maybe a random exit.
Maybe, or maybe it travels between ley lines looking for people, so it's not so random to it. It's like, oh, I'm going to go here now, or I'm going to go there now, and you might end up a continent away. Mm-hmm. And then you're like,
well, I'm saying when I say random, I mean to you it's random,
right?
Because you come out and you're like, where am I?
Yes.
Falls asleep and leaves.
I don't like the idea of it killing you. I don't mind.
It's not purposely trying to kill you.
I understand that, but
it doesn't actually kill you because the thing is, you come up out of place and time, and see that's the problem is, because in a way, if you're feeding it, you're feeling the positive emotion too, so you feel great, But it's the thing with fairy magical beings, especially typically when you go into the realms, the idea is it's supposed to be tempting, but it's not quite right because there are other things there that are very bad, and but the story becomes that person, leaving and getting out. Whatever they were doing before is done. That boat is passed. Maybe you come out and Saruman has conquered the world. And now what do you do? Because you're the last wizard because he killed all the other wizards. Because you're Michael the Grey.
I don't like the idea of a great deal of time passing. And I'm okay with it fatigues you to the point where something else could kill you. I'm okay with it.
Putting you go to its realm. You go to its realm. I will settle on you exit somewhere else.
Okay.
And it won't kill you, but you could be 18,000 miles away.
Yeah. I am okay with it putting you in a state that is very dangerous to your relative location. Mm-hmm. So the original example I said,
adventure to get out of the realm. Because I think that in itself, it will release you and you will kind of get your quest thing going. I have to go this way to get out. But there could be other things there that are dangerous that you might have to deal with or bypass to try and get out of that. So I think there's an adventure as well to escape the realm. It's not as simple as you just reappear somewhere else. You have to get out at the next point. And then once you do get out, you're somewhere and it's not going to be the same place. Okay. I like it. So do you have any final thoughts for the Fusellbüt?
Does it have any natural weaknesses? Like something, or maybe a creature that it avoids or something?
I have none written down, but typically things do have weaknesses.
Like, is there anything that eats it? Is there anything that preys upon it?
No. Because if you get close, you get trapped up into the thing to try and feed it. But maybe there's like a plant, like a Fusellbane or something. I like that idea.
What?
There's like a Fusellbane plant.
A plant? Oh, I like a plant. That's a good idea.
But the problem is you need to know that. But there's a Fusellbane plant.
And what is the Fusellbane plant though? Is it like something that it likes to eat but shouldn't eat? Is it something you can use against it?
It's something that you could use because whatever it magically, it's the thing that repels it. It will cause it to retreat to its realm because no one knows
so
why.
You can have like garlic to a vampire sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
But because it's a magical being, it's a bit more severe, and it doesn't blow up. It just kind of it will get frustrated. You'll probably have a short momentary drain, and then it just fades out before you fall asleep. But that's probably more hidden door, obviously. Yeah. No, I like that. I think that sort of rounds it out. Anything else do you have for the Fusellbüt? I think it's pretty cool.
I like it. I'm just trying to think. Is there? I don't know. Like how do people know about them? Like, is there, and this is more for you, how does somebody know about them?
Because they've heard stories about people who've run into them. Right? Because, you hear stories of these people who have come away with great wisdom or super strength or something amazing after interacting with them, and other people who like disappear and come out of nowhere, and they're like, there's like this baby and it looked weird, but then it got mad, and all of a sudden before I know it, they don't remember the inside realm. So like they come out and they're like, I just fell asleep, and when I woke up I was in the woods here. I don't know how I got here. So you don't even.
I'm never a fan. You've suggested that for other things before, and I'm not a fan of that because it removes the possibility of story, and I always like somebody being able to tell the tale.
But the tale is leading up to the thing, disappearing and waking up somewhere else. Think of the horror, in that scenario where you've had a big adventure that you don't remember, but when you wake up, the adventure is, and it creates these tears of tale. So it's like a boogeyman on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like this beneficial being. And it's, it's the riddle of the Fusellbüt. How do you get the positive versus the negative?
So somebody that had a positive experience with it could tell the story of it, but somebody that has a negative experience of it would have kind of a choppy story.
They would remember up to the point they fell asleep.
So somebody could be like, well, maybe, you know what? You ran into a Fusellbüt. That's what happened.
They would maybe even know it was a Fusellbüt, but they won't know what happened inside of the realm. They'll just know that they fell asleep and they woke up somewhere else. And so the story is you'll wake up somewhere else, and you don't know where. And then there's always the people who don't wake up because they could exist or they might not. That could just be lore.
The Fusellbüts could exist, or the people they sucked up.
Oh, the Fusellbüts exist, but some people don't get it out of the realm. So if they don't get it out of the realm, they would never reappear. Because I said it is an adventure for you to escape the realm. So if you escape the realm and get out, you won't remember what happened to you. But for the people who die inside, they run into the wrong thing. And the Fusellbüt is not a malignant creature. It doesn't want you to be harmed. But there could be other things within the realm that might want to kill you.
I like it. Okay, so world building task of the day. I'm sure you guys are going to be shocked by this one.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's a little different than normal.
It's a little different. Create a character scene with a Fusellbüt.
Yes.
And Jeff will have the correct spelling, and actually, it'll probably be included in the show title. So you probably already know.
It'll be in the show title.
Fusellbüt.
Because it's English, but it's to get the Bedracum pronunciation. Yes, and so it looks like funky English. It'll look really cool if you're on the website. So go to Gardul.com, look up the show notes for this episode, and you'll see I'll use the actual Bedracum carved characters. And the real world task for the day is share the scene in the undercroft if you want to. Just go to the undercroft, go to facebook.com/groups/undercroft. Ask to join. There'll be 3 questions you have to answer or you won't get in. Once you do that, then you can actually share your story right there. Just share it out somewhere. Tag me, tag Michael in there. We're the admins for the group, so our name should be all over the spot. So just go ahead and tag us, just to make sure I don't miss it, because that'd be very sad. But let us know. And the best one will get a shout out.
Ooh, I like that idea.
On the show at some point, probably a month or so in the future. Depends on how far ahead we are on episodes at the time. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.